My husband is cheating with my sister, and I don't know what to do anymore. I never thought this would be my life. I, 32F, have been married to my husband, Mark, 35M, for 7 years. I always thought we had a good marriage. Nothing perfect, of course, but a solid relationship built on trust and love. Or at least I thought so. We've been through some tough times, but I always believed we'd weather any storm that came our way. What I didn't expect, though, was that the storm would come from within my own family. My sister, Emma, 28F, and I were always close. Growing up, we were practically best friends, despite our 4-year age difference. We went through everything together: school, family drama, breakups, everything. She's always been the one person I could turn to for support, and I trusted her completely. Now I'm sitting here, writing this, feeling like my entire world has been turned upside down. My husband, the man I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with, is cheating on me with my sister. And I don't know how to move forward. Mark and I met when I was 24. I was fresh out of college, working my first real job, and he was this charming, confident guy who swept me off my feet. We clicked right away, and it wasn't long before we started dating. He was everything I wanted in a partner: smart, funny, driven, and I felt like I'd hit the jackpot. We got married 3 years later, and I genuinely believed we were happy. Sure, we had our ups and downs like any couple, but I never doubted that Mark loved me. We talked about starting a family, bought a house together, and built a life I thought would last forever. Emma, my sister, was always a big part of our lives. She and Mark got along well, and I was grateful for that. In fact, I was happy that they had a good relationship. I always thought it was a good thing when your partner could get along with your family. Mark was charismatic and Emma was outgoing, so they naturally hit it off. I never thought anything of it. Why would I? Looking back now, I feel like an idiot. I missed so many signs that something was wrong, and I hate myself for it. The first sign that something was off came about a year ago. Mark started spending more time with Emma, more than what seemed normal. At first, I didn't think much of it. Emma was going through a tough time with her own relationship. She had just broken up with her long-term boyfriend, and I figured Mark was just being supportive. He's always been a good listener, and Emma confided in him a lot. But then it became more frequent. Mark would go over to Emma's apartment to help her out with various things, fixing things around the house, running errands for her, or just hanging out. I noticed that he started going over there without telling me beforehand, and sometimes he'd come home late, claiming he lost track of time. I started to feel uneasy about how much time they were spending together, but I didn't want to seem paranoid. I trusted both of them. Why would I suspect anything? This was my husband and my sister, two people who I loved and trusted completely. The thought of them betraying me never crossed my mind, until it did. The turning point came one night when Mark didn't come home until after midnight. He had told me earlier in the evening that he was going to Emma's to help her set up some new furniture she had bought. I didn't think much of it, but as the hours passed and he still wasn't home, I started to worry. I texted him, but he didn't respond right away, and when he finally did, his reply was short and vague. Something didn't feel right. When he finally walked through the door, he acted like nothing was wrong, but I could tell he was nervous. His energy was off. I asked him what took so long, and he brushed it off, saying Emma needed more help than he expected. I wanted to believe him, but something in my gut told me there was more to the story. I didn't push it that night, but the seed of doubt had been planted. The doubt lingered for weeks. Every time Mark went to Emma's, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I started to notice more little things. Mark would get defensive when I asked about his plans. He was more protective of his phone, and sometimes, when he thought I wasn't looking, I'd catch him staring at Emma in a way that made my stomach turn. I tried to brush it off as my imagination running wild, but I couldn't let it go. I was driving myself crazy with suspicion, but I didn't want to confront either of them without proof. I didn't want to believe that my husband was cheating on me, and I definitely didn't want to believe that my sister would betray me like that. Then, about 2 months ago, I found out the truth in the most gut-wrenching way possible. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Mark had told me he was going to help Emma move some boxes in her apartment. I was home alone, feeling restless and uneasy. Something inside me snapped, and I decided to drive over to Emma's apartment to see for myself what was really going on. When I got there, I saw Mark's car parked outside. My heart was racing, and I had this overwhelming sense of dread as I walked up to her apartment. I stood outside the door for what felt like an eternity, trying to muster the courage to knock. But before I could, I heard voices from inside. Mark's and Emma's. I couldn't make out everything they were saying, but what I did hear made my blood run cold. They were talking about me. Emma was asking Mark if he felt guilty about what they were doing, about lying to me. And Mark, my husband, said he did feel guilty, but that he didn't want to stop. He said that he didn't know what to do, that he didn't want to hurt me, but that he couldn't stop his feelings for her. My heart shattered in that moment. I felt like I was going to be sick. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My husband and my sister were having an affair. I stumbled away from the door, not wanting to hear anymore. I got in my car and drove home, numb and in shock. I didn't know what to do when I got home. I felt like my world had just collapsed, and I didn't know how to pick up the pieces. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, replaying the conversation I had overheard in my head over and over again. When Mark came home that evening, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I confronted him. "I know," I said, my voice trembling. "I know you're cheating on me with Emma." Mark's face went pale. For a moment, he didn't say anything, and I could see the panic in his eyes. He knew he had been caught. I can explain," he stammered, but I didn't want to hear it. "Don't lie to me, Mark," I said, my voice rising. "I heard you. I went to Emma's today, and I heard everything. How long has this been going on?" He hung his head, and in that moment, I knew it was true. All of it. My worst nightmare had come to life. "It's been a few months," he admitted quietly. "But I didn't mean for it to happen. It just happened." I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. My own husband, the man I thought I could trust with my life, had been sleeping with my sister for months. I couldn't even look at him. "How could you do this to me?" I asked, tears streaming down my face. "How could you betray me like this? How could she?" Mark tried to explain, to apologize, but it was all just noise to me. I couldn't process what he was saying. All I could think about was how my entire world had just come crashing down. After Mark's confession, I knew I had to confront Emma. I couldn't believe that she would do something like this to me, her own sister. We had always been so close, and now it felt like she had driven a knife into my back. I called her the next day and told her I needed to talk to her. She sounded nervous on the phone, but agreed to meet me at a coffee shop near her apartment. When I saw her, I could barely contain my anger. I wanted to scream at her, to ask her how she could do this to me, but I forced myself to stay calm, at least for the moment. "How long have you and Mark been sleeping together?" I asked, my voice cold. Emma looked down at her hands, unable to meet my eyes. "It's not what you think," she said, her voice shaky. "Don't lie to me, Emma," I said, my voice rising. "I know everything. Mark told me. I went to your apartment yesterday and heard you two talking. How long has this been going on?" She finally looked up at me, tears in her eyes. "It started a few months ago," she admitted. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. It was a mistake." "A mistake?" I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Sleeping with my husband for months is a mistake." "I didn't want to hurt you," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, my hands shaking with anger. "You're my sister, Emma. How could you do this to me? How could you betray me like this?" She didn't have an answer. She just sat there, crying, and I realized in that moment that I couldn't forgive her. I couldn't forgive either of them. That was 2 months ago, and I'm still trying to figure out how to move forward. I've separated from Mark and am staying with a friend while I try to figure out what to do next. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive him, or Emma, for what they've done. I feel like I've lost everything. My marriage is in shambles, and my relationship with my sister is destroyed. I don't know how to rebuild from here. Subscribe and like for more videos.